Good morning, everyone. My name is Doug Stevenson. I am here to tell you about how you can use Firebase in your apps. So if you've seen so far throughout the conference, you've noticed that Firebase is made up of a bunch of different components. You're free to pick and choose any one of them that you want. So some people are interested in database, others in analytics. You have this amazing set of tools to use to build your app. You're free to use any one of them, pick and choose, or you can use the whole thing. But what I'd like to tell you today is that Firebase is actually an integrated, unified mobile set of development platform with tools to help you grow, develop, and earn money from your mobile app. There are 15 components in total. They are meant to work well together. If you adopt many of them, you'll find that the components have a certain way of working well together. 13 of these are part of the core Firebase platform. 2 are what we call integrations. So they're standalone products that are, have been modified and changed to work well with the Firebase platform. Now, this is some feedback I received. I put it in quotes. It's not actual feedback. This is sort of like aggregate feedback. I've been talking to developers all day yesterday and the day before. Everyone's been saying how much they love it, especially some of our early access partners. Some of our partners have been wholeheartedly adopting the Firebase platform for their apps. And I'll give you some more specific feedback about that later. But that's why my voice is a little bit hoarse today. I've been talking to so many people who have wonderful things to say, and they've been experimenting with it, doing code labs, putting components in their apps. And I would like to tell you about a couple app ideas I have and how Firebase can be used to build those out. So my first idea, I've experimented with this little idea called ride sharing. I don't know if this would ever take off, but my app idea is a ride sharing app called You Got Ride. And that name doesn't refer to anything in particular. But let's see, how could we build this with Firebase? Well, the first thing you probably want to do is have iOS and Android app. This is a mobile-first app. There's an app for drivers. So if you're a driver, you probably want to find out where are passengers, identify them, locate them, go get them, and take them where they're going. And if you're a passenger, you want to hail a ride. You want to find a driver to get you where you're going. So that's a basic ride-sharing app. Crazy idea, right? So the first thing you probably want to do is get users logged into your app. It would be kind of crazy to have a ride-sharing app where anonymous drivers are giving rides to like anonymous people. That seems like a recipe for disaster. You probably want to get people logged in and identified so they can have some assurance that this is totally a legit thing. So you can do that with Firebase authentication. People can get logged in with minimal friction, and it's a federated login system. So we'll accept Google+ logins, Facebook, Twitter, and GitHub, of course, regular email and password, and if you bring your own authentication, you can integrate that as well. Now, the good thing about this is that once we have the user's identity, we can access their profile picture, so that can be used to help drivers locate passengers and passengers locate drivers. But if the profile picture isn't appropriate or missing, what you can do is you can use Firebase storage to provide a place for people to take pictures of themselves and store that in places. So once you have a profile picture stored, then you can use that to help drivers and passengers find each other. Now, Firebase storage is built on top of Google Cloud Storage, and as such, it scales to petabytes of storage. Now, petabytes is kind of a weird word. It's big, right? Well, that roughly translates to billions of photos, so you'll never run out of space when you need it. Now, you probably want drivers to be able to locate passengers wherever they are. So if a passenger happens to move, that driver needs to respond to that. So what you can do is you can use Firebase real-time database to write the user's latitude and longitude, their coordinates, into the real-time database, and then the driver can actually receive that in real time. So you can think of like data going into the cloud, into the database, and being distributed in real time to those who are listening to it. So not only can drivers pay attention to passengers' location, the passengers can also see where a driver is. And this is great. This makes for a great experience. It gives you some assurance that things are going according to plan. Now, if you're using authentication along with the database and storage, what you can do is set up rules so that the data you store in your database and in your file storage can be protected by authentication rules. And you write those rules yourself. You can determine who can see what other content, so you can be sure that your passengers or drivers' data is secure and stored safely. Now, you probably don't want to be glued to your app all the time. So imagine you're a passenger and you've hailed a ride, and the ride is like 10 minutes away. You don't want to stare at your app for 10 minutes waiting for the driver to arrive. So what you can do is allow the user to put the app away, and then send a message to them when the driver gets near. And you can use Firebase Cloud Messaging for that. So with Firebase Cloud Messaging, you can get users back into your app at the time something is important to them. So for a passenger, when the driver arrives, they'll need to know that. You can send them a notification. Likewise, if you're a driver, you might want to know where passengers are. If there's a passenger nearby who wants a ride, you can get a notification for that as well. Now, it's worth noting these are event-driven notifications, so Firebase Cloud Messaging is great for times when there's something in the system that changed, and you need to know about that in the app. Now, there's a different kind of notification called Firebase notifications, and what this gives you is a way to type in messages and send them to your users in the console. So in the console, you can say, I don't know, remind users if they haven't used the app in a while. Or you can say, advertise a promotion. So if you have 20% off rides, you can send a notification to everyone and get them back into the app. Now, if you're trying to perform an experiment, you might want to figure out, is early authentication better or is late authentication better? We do want our users authenticated, but you want to know the right time in the app to get users authenticated. So a lot of people might turn away if there's early authentication. They might not want to bother with that. So you might want to experiment and say, well, I'll test out early authentication and I'll test out late authentication after the user has sort of poked around in the app a little bit. And if you want to know which works better, you can use Firebase Remote Config to perform that experiment. So you're essentially doing an A/B test. And this is a great way to find out how your app works better for your users. Now, you probably want to get the word out about your app. So the best way to do that is to hook into relevant searches. So on Google, people might be searching for, say, a taxi or airport transportation. In this case, you can use Google AdWords along with Firebase to hook into those search results and have your app appear. It's essentially a relevant ad in search results to get people into your app at the time that they're looking for it. Another way to get users into your app is with dynamic links. So you can think of a dynamic link as a bridge between your web content and your mobile content. It's pretty easy to get web traffic. We've been doing that for a long time. It's easy to hook into searches that way. Everyone knows how to use a web browser. But you might want to push people into your mobile app for that unique experience. So dynamic links can do that. It's great for marketing promotions. With a dynamic link, you can say, have a special link that people will follow, then that links directly into the app for a first-time experience that keeps them engaged. And also, if they don't have the app installed, what dynamic links will do is get you installed into the app, and then after that, it will take them, again, directly to the content. Now, in the past, deep links always had the problem of not being able to survive this installation process. But with dynamic links, now you can. You can get users installed and directly to the content that you want. And now there's Firebase Invites, which is built on top of that. This lets happy users invite other happy users. This is word-of-mouth marketing. This is like the best way to get users, because glowing reviews from your happy users are more likely to create retention for the users that they refer. Now, invites are built on top of dynamic links. You get all the power of dynamic links with the personalization that an invitation gives. And we found that this increases retention drastically. The last component I'd like to talk about for this app, for the ride-sharing app, is analytics. Now, analytics is the core component. This is the thing that ties together the rest of the Firebase platform. So with analytics, the obvious benefit is that you can know how your app is being used. And it's worth noting, this is an all-new analytics component. This is not a remake or a rehash of something else. This is built specifically for Firebase for mobile applications. You can know how people are using your app, and you can also measure the efficacy of your AdWords and your invitations, know how users are interacting with your app from external sources. And it works really well with notifications as well. So now with analytics, you can define an audience of users who you want to target. So say you want to target everyone who took a ride in Boston, say, in the last week or two. Now you can get them to get back into your app and type a notification and say, hey, we hope you enjoyed your ride. Would you consider taking another one? So that's 10 components. I promised 15. I showed 15 up here. We only talked about 10. Now, that's a lot of components. This is a great way to start building out a ride-sharing app. But what about the other 5 components? What do we have? So I have a second app idea, and it's totally unique. It's a recipe-sharing app, and I call it iChef. I'm actually really bad at making up mobile app names, but run with me with this. So imagine you have an app that's Android, iOS, and mobile web, and desktop web. You're scattering your app as far as you can. You're trying to reach as many people as possible. You generally want your app to be used anonymously, so if people are just doing regular web searches, they might log in, or they're not logged in yet, but what they'll do is find a recipe, search for other recipes, enjoy the app anonymously. But if you want someone to help, integrate their own recipes into your app, you might want to get them logged in. So that's how this app works. So the first thing, obviously, you'll need a place to store all of your recipe data, right? So you can use Firebase real-time database for that. Now, it's worth noting that recipes aren't really real-time. There's nothing like terribly dynamic. Like once you've created a recipe and put its data in there, it's not going to change. There's nothing really real-time about it. Now, Firebase real-time database can handle that, but what you can do with real-time database is you could say, create a real-time chat associated with each and every recipe so that everyone who logs in can talk about it with their friends and with the person who created the recipe. You can make your website and your mobile app much more dynamic and much more interactable. Is that a word, interactable? Interactive. I think interactive is a better word. Now, of course, you'll want people who are submitting recipes to take pictures of their recipe, maybe at various stages. So you want people to upload photos. So you can do that with Firebase storage. Like I said, Firebase storage scales massively, and you'll never worry about space again. Now, for the web side of things, if you have a mobile app, you generally don't worry about deployment. The app is deployed on the user device. But for web apps, you need a way to get your static content out there. So you have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All of that can be served through Firebase hosting. Firebase hosting gives you a way to deploy your static content out into the world in a CDN over SSL, so everything is SSL protected. Certificates are deployed automatically, and you don't have to worry about it. And there's a simple command line interface to deploy as often as you want. Now, it's also worth noting that if there are some graphical assets, say, that you don't want to package into your Android or iOS app, you could also deploy those to the Firebase hosting and then load those as needed. So that can shrink down your original APK size if you're an Android developer, or the iOS app can also be shrunk down. Now, this is important in parts of the world where there's not very much data. The bandwidth is very low. So having a small initial app size is very important. Deploy the rest of your content onto hosting and load it on demand. Now, of course, you do want to get people logged in, and authentication can do that. Now, what advantage does authentication provide? Well, you're essentially encouraging people to join in and be social. Say, log in. Have an identity. Have a space within your app. Let them interact with each other. Now you can do things like user-to-user communications. You can store specific data per user. So if users want to favorite recipes, you can store that within their space. If users want to follow other recipe creators, they can do that. You can store information about them and help them navigate your app better. Now, I was trying to figure out how might I use Firebase Cloud Messaging. So it's an event-driven messaging system, but how might you use it in an app like this? Well, there's kind of an unsung feature in cloud messaging. When you send a cloud message, it doesn't actually have to contain text of a message you want someone to read. What you could do is use cloud messaging to ping the app to say, hey, there's new content. You should load this. You should cache it so that when the user opens it up, they have fresh content. So for example, if you have a user logged in and they have favorited some other users, they want to know when they've updated new recipes, you can ping the app. The user's app can say, oh, I have new content. I'm going to download it, cache it, so that when they open it, the recipes are all there and they don't have to wait for it. And this makes for a very pleasant and much more natural experience than opening up and waiting for the content that they were hoping to find. Now again, you can use remote config for more things than just A/B testing. So let's say you have, you're doing a massive redesign of your website. So everything's changing, the look, the feel, the colors, the whole experience, and you want to launch this all at the same time for all your users at, say, during like a television event or some marketing push. And it's important that it's all available right at the same time. Well, in the past, you might have had to say, publish a new app to the App Store and wait for approval. Same thing with the Play Store. The Play Store doesn't give you a guarantee about when that app hits the market. So it's been kind of hard to make sure everyone gets the experience that you want at the same time. But with remote config, what you can do is essentially create a switch in the dashboard to say, I want to switch from the old experience to the new experience immediately. So you can be sure that everyone who's using your app gets the experience you want at the time that you want it. And as a side benefit, if something goes wrong with that new experience, say it's causing the app to crash, what you can do is turn it off, right? You can revert features that are having problems with the flip of a switch. Now, for apps like iChef that has content on the web and on mobile apps, and they're parallel, right? You're generally looking at the same thing in both iOS, Android, and the web. You can use app indexing. And the advantage to using app indexing is that Google will naturally scan all of your web content and index it and make it easily searchable. But you can use app indexing to get content in your mobile apps indexed as well. So all you have to do is write a few simple rules to say how your web content maps into your mobile content, and app indexing will now let users do searches and link directly into your mobile app, deeply into the recipes that they're looking for. So if they're on Android, they go to the Android app, iOS to iOS, and web to web. So it makes for a much more seamless and easy-to-use experience. Also, there's a benefit of knowing that usage within your app actually promotes its rankings within Google. So if you have active mobile users, you can be sure that that activity will help the ranking within your overall search results. Now, with dynamic links, one thing you can do is link between the mobile version and your web version. So again, like I said, it's really easy to draw traffic to your website. But what if you want to push people into the mobile app? What you can do is say, if someone's looking at a recipe in the mobile view and you want them to go into your iOS app, simply provide a link on the web page to say, view this on mobile. And when they do that, they can get installed and get right to the content, and you can drive them to a more pleasant experience for their device. So again, with invites, you want happy users to refer happy users. But there's another benefit. So with an invite, since they're built on top of dynamic links, what you can do is embed some context in your invites to say, give people a referral bonus, to say, invite a friend, and that friend then gets, say, $5 off their grocery bill. So if you have a deal with a grocery store, you could say, for everyone who invites one of their friends, we'll give them a coupon, and that makes for a great first-time experience and greatly increases your retention. Oh, there we go. So again, with AdWords, just like before, you'll probably want to hook into search results for things like recipe book and dinner ideas. The Google AdWords integration will definitely help drive traffic to your mobile app. And of course, you'll want to monetize this thing. You don't want users to use this free forever. I mean, you want them to use it for free, but you need to get paid at the end of the day, right? So AdMob by Google is another Firebase integration. It's the same AdMob that you already know that's been monetizing great apps for years. And now it works great with Firebase. And there's one new feature in AdMob that you should know about. It's called Native Express. And what it lets you do is include ads in your app that match the look and feel of your app. So this is great for putting ads in scrolling lists. So if you have an ad in a scrolling list that looks like the other items in the scrolling list, I think users are more likely to notice it, click on it, and then that should drive more revenue to your app. So this is pretty exciting. Developers have been asking this for a long time. It's also great for games, right? Games have their own very distinct styling, and if you can put ads in your game that match that styling, it creates for a less jarring experience. And of course, analytics, again, the thing that ties it all together. You can measure the efficacy of your invitations, your dynamic links, your AdWords, and eventually, we hope that analytics will have even better and tighter integration. So I highly recommend you look at analytics. You can, over at the Firebase tent, we have demos of analytics, and you can talk to people who are very knowledgeable about this. Now, I've gone over 13 components. I promised 15. That means there's 2 left. My counting is very good. I took math in school. So what's missing here? Well, the 13 components I've talked about are great for adding features and functionality to your app, but there's 2 more things left. And what we can do with Firebase is also test our app. So with Firebase, we have Firebase Test Lab for Android. With Firebase Test Lab for Android, you can test your app on actual devices hosted in the cloud. So with Firebase, we own the devices. Google owns them, manages them, and you can test on them. Now this is great because if you've ever done Android development, you know that you could end up with stacks of mobile devices on your desk. And I had this problem too, where I had a cabinet full of devices, and the team I was working with, they would constantly go in there, grab devices, they would get lost, you could never find the thing that you wanted, you had tangled cables on your desk if you were testing on different devices. This is a terrible situation. You should abandon that and just do testing in the cloud. So we have phones, small tablets, large tablets across a variety of OEMs. They're always ready and waiting for you to do your tests. And so if you're an Android developer, you probably know you can write instrumentation tests as a way to sort of like script the interactions with your app. And you can run those on your desktop. But again, that's not scalable. If you have instrumentation tests, you can deploy those to Firebase Test Lab. And we'll run those instrumentation tests against the set of devices you selected. And then we run them concurrently. You don't run them in order, we run them concurrently. So you get very fast, very comprehensive results immediately. Now, if you're not into writing unit tests, and who is? Writing tests isn't fun. You can also have an automated test, like crawl your app for you. And we call this a robo test. Now, this little robot here, there's no actual robot poking and prodding your app. This is sort of like an artist's imagination of what a robo test is like. But with a robo test, what happens is we have software that looks at the UI widgets in your app and fills in text fields, pushes buttons, selects drop-downs, goes through menu items. It tries to discover everything in your app. And if there's a crash, you'll know about it. It also takes screenshots along the way so that you can know that everything is rendering properly on the set of devices you selected. Now, this is an actual device rack. We had a photographer come in and make some very nice photos. This sort of demonstrates how, much like a server farm, we can have device farms now. So I really want to visit the device lab someday. I haven't been there yet. We have one on Google campus and one in Atlanta. I think this is fascinating. We have a sort of a light version of that over in the Firebase tent. So if you want to see what a rack kind of looks like, we have a demo for you to see. And lastly, there's also a crash reporting component. So you can do all the testing you want on devices in the cloud, but inevitably users will find some problem. So you can use Firebase crash reporting to observe and triage those crashes. So they'll be grouped by type. There's a clustering algorithm where you can see similar crashes, and then we'll order them by severity so you know which ones to tackle first. And this should help your overall app quality. Now, the way I see Test Lab and crash reporting working together is that during development, you'll make use of Test Lab in the cloud to make sure that all of your tests are working as planned. Then for Android, when you publish to an alpha or beta channel, there's another test that's run. We call this a pre-release report. And this is a very simple robo test. And what this will do is give you kind of a quick check to see, is my app actually launching and working OK on a variety of devices. And then, of course, your alpha and beta users could then, if they experience crashes, that will report back into the dashboard, and you can use that to create new tests to make sure that you fix those properly. And then when you promote your app from alpha or beta to production, you then have actual live production-grade crash reporting. So this is a great way to ensure app quality throughout your development lifecycle. So that's all 15 components. Again, you can take as many of these or as few of these as you want. I'm a big fan of using as many as possible, especially for new apps. Now, I understand that established apps may already have solutions for some of these in place, and that's fine. You can keep using them. But if you want to replace anything, that's fine. Or if you want to create a whole new app on top of Firebase, that's great as well. I've been very excited to talk to developers who are going to build whole new things on top of Firebase. Now, one of our early access partners, Monetizing Studio, had some very specific things to say about it. So here's what they did. They built 3 apps. Chew Day, which is an anniversary app, so it helps couples plan an anniversary day. There's Me Time, which is a diary app. And there's School of Rock, which is a school lunch app. Now, some of these, I believe, are not in languages that are English, so beware that if you download one of these, it may not make sense, but you can see Firebase in action. Now, what they did is they showed us this chart of how they used Firebase. And you can see across the board, they are making heavy use of Firebase, and they loved it. So the more solid icons or components they definitely integrated. The more faded out ones are ones that they're planning on in the future. They just didn't get to it yet. But they were excited to tell us about how well they were able to use Firebase, that they gave us some quotes. The CTO of Monetizing Studio said, "I feel that recent mobile development is similar to putting Lego bricks together. Too often, some of the bricks don't fit well, and a few even become problematic. But from what we experienced, Firebase feels like the genuine Lego brick set that guarantees compatibility and stability." Now, I love this Lego brick analogy. This is exactly how we intended Firebase to work. We give you these components that you can build up your app, create an infrastructure that you don't have to create. You can focus on your user's experience. And their CEO went on to say, "Our main goal has always been about creating products that people actually use rather than product craftsmanship. So we used to concentrate all our efforts on our core competencies and borrow competencies in areas where we lacked a cutting edge. Google has gifted us with Firebase, which has been a complete package for what we used to borrow. Now, what he's saying here is, as an app developer, you might have to pull in all these different components and sort of assemble something from a bunch of other components. But with Firebase, you get one thing that gives you all of the core, all of your infrastructure that you need. Once you have that infrastructure in place, you don't have to worry about server farms or scaling up or, creating revenue or drawing users into the app. All of that is there. You can focus on the app and your users and the experience they want to have. So that's all I have. If you want to learn more about Firebase components, there's another talk here at 3 p.m. Todd Kirpelman will talk about how some of the individual clusters of components work really well together. I like this talk. I like the idea that these components are like Lego bricks. So he'll provide that Lego brick experience. If you have any questions about Firebase, visit any one of these URLs. If you want to get deeper into it, there's a code lab called Friendly Chat. And with Friendly Chat, you'll actually walk through the integration of like 7 or 8 of these components and see how they actually work. And then there's Friendly Picks, which is an actual live app, which will demonstrate a lot of Firebase features. So I'm really excited about Firebase, and I can't wait to see what you build. Thank you very much.